Hello and good evening. My name's Don Arleth and you're watching World News Tonight, live from Warsaw. Donald Trump threatens to place tariffs on countries that don't go along with his push to take over Greenland. This comes as U.S. senators visit to Denmark to highlight their disagreement with Trump's policies. We'll have more on that in just a moment, but first, the latest headlines. Ukraine grapples with the worst energy crisis since the start of the war. Slovakia's Fico en route to sign a nuclear cooperation deal with the United States. And preparing for war, real estate developers in Poland now required to include shelters in new apartment and public buildings. Donald Trump won't drop his Greenland obsession, and now he's raising the stakes. A new threat for Europe: stand in our way and you might face new tariffs. As U.S. senators travel to Denmark in protest and European unity is starting to fray, Washington is brushing off allies and doubling down. The question isn't whether Europe is alarmed, it's how far Trump is actually willing to go. Kazimierz Wysiak breaks it down in this report.
But actually, this is a much bigger story.
U.S. President Donald Trump refuses to let go of the idea of acquiring Greenland. He's now threatening tariffs if European countries stand in his way.
And I may do that for Greenland, too. I may put a tariff on countries if they don't go along with Greenland, because we need Greenland for national security, so I may do that.
These threats coincide with a delegation of 11 U.S. senators, including 2 Republicans, traveling to Denmark to protest President Trump's plans to acquire the autonomous island.
I'm here today because millions of Americans are deeply concerned about the recent rhetoric of the United States taking over Greenland, either buying it or using military force.
When you ask the American people whether or not they think it is a good idea for the United States to acquire Greenland, the vast majority, some 75%, will say, we do not think that that is a good idea.
The visit comes a day after several European nations, including France, Germany, the UK and Norway, sent a handful of soldiers to Greenland in a show of unity with the Danish territory. Washington, however, is unimpressed.
I don't think troops in Europe impact the president's decision-making process, nor does it impact his goal of the acquisition of Greenland at all.
The European troops are there to help Denmark organize military exercises, but the modest contingent is noticeably lacking soldiers from Central Eastern Europe, especially Poland, while the government in Warsaw expresses solidarity with Denmark.
I will do everything to ensure that Europe as a whole remains united, because our Polish security directly depends on the stability of the European Union and the solidarity of European NATO members.
The country's president, Conservative Karol Nawrocki, has gone a step further, saying the issue of Greenland should be between the US and Denmark alone.
I am counting on this issue to be resolved diplomatically between the President of the United States and the Prime Minister of Denmark.
And he has the approval of Vladimir Putin's closest ally in the EU, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban.
Well said, good point.
The centrist Polish government, led by Prime Minister Donald Tusk, is now walking the tightrope between staying united with its European partners, while at the same time doing its best not to poke the proverbial bear.
We want to be both good allies of the United States and good allies of our even closer neighbor, Denmark. And therefore, yes, we hope that the issue is resolved between Denmark and the United States.
30 years, Poland has gained its security guarantee from America, and it's used Europe for its economy and its political stability, and that's kind of being flipped in reverse at the moment. Poland is looking at this with a kind of existential anxiety.
Instead of soldiers, Poland will soon send its ambassador to Denmark to visit Greenland. His task will be to assess the need to establish a Polish consulate on the Arctic island. But will Trump try to take over the territory? Such a move would certainly be met with some opposition from the US Congress. The real question is whether that's enough to curb the American president's ambitions.
If we don't go in, Russia's going to go in and China's going to go in. And there's not a thing that Denmark can do about it, but we can do everything about it.
These comments leaving the Danish and Greenlandic foreign ministers in need of a smoke after their meeting with Trump's team in the White House earlier this week. For TVP World, Kazimierz Łysiak.
Winter in Ukraine is still biting hard, and civilians are paying the chilly price. The capital, Kyiv, is still reeling from recent Russian attacks, with thousands left without power, heat, and sometimes running water. It's hard to predict when the crisis will end. Now let's go to Oz Chatterjee in Kyiv for an update. Good evening, Oz. So it's very cold there in the capital. What's the current situation with the electricity and the heat there in Kyiv?
Well, it's minus 13. I just looked at the temperature right now. It's dipping below that. Could be down as low as minus 17 tonight. It's been this temperature for a few days. It's expected to be this temperature for a few days longer at the very minimum. It's one of Ukraine's coldest winters in decades. And the situation with the power is still, we have a state of emergency declared in Ukraine about the power situation. President Zelensky saying the country can only meet 30% of its energy needs at the moment. There are blackouts around the capital city, Kyiv. Many street lights are off. So it's a very serious situation indeed. Vitaly Klitschko, the mayor of Kyiv, said at least 100 homes are without heating as well. So the state provides heating as well as electricity. So there's a sort of state central heating system, and that is down for at least 100 high-rise apartment buildings. So many, potentially thousands of people caught up without heating, without power. It's a very, very dire situation for the capital and for many parts of the country. Now, the Ukrainian government has set up these resilient centers around the country, these heated tents where people can come, charge their phones, get a cup of tea or coffee, stay the night even. But, you know, this is still a very, very difficult situation for many people, and many people won't be able to access these heated tents. So a very, very dangerous situation as life is becoming increasingly unlivable in these conditions with the power situation as it is.
Yeah, and winter will still continue on. Now, Ukrainian officials are reportedly traveling to the United States to continue talks with the Americans. What is the latest on that front?
Well, President Zelensky announced this on Friday, said that Rustem Umerov and Kirilo Budanov would be heading part of the Ukrainian delegation off to the US for further talks, consultations around potential security guarantees. Here's what the president had to say in a statement released on Friday.
Over the coming days, meetings between our Ukrainian representatives in the United States will be scheduled. The Ukrainian delegation is currently on its way to the United States. We hope that there will be more clarity regarding the documents that we have already prepared with the American side, as well as Russia's response to all the diplomatic work that has taken place and remains ongoing.
Now, it's also understood that the Ukrainians are potentially prepared to sign a deal with the Americans at Davos, the World Economic Forum, later this month. That will be regarding some sort of post-war recovery economic agreement that the Ukrainians want. It's estimated more than 800 billion is going to be needed to rebuild Ukraine. So this is a kind of a boon for Kyiv if they can get this signed. Zelensky also offering to sign his side of the proposals, the peace proposals negotiated between Kyiv and Washington. So lots more diplomacy to come in the coming weeks, and we'll see what comes out of this talk in Washington on Saturday.
That's right, lots more diplomacy. Well, Oz Chatterjee reporting from Kyiv. Stay warm and stay safe. Thanks for that. Buying a home in Poland may soon mean more than choosing the kitchen tiles or whether or not to have a balcony. As security concerns grow, the country is racing to expand its network of shelters, raising a bigger question of whether Poland is truly ready to protect civilians if the unthinkable happens. Our defense correspondent Zuzanna Jurek brings us inside the state of shelters in Poland.
Though what you see behind me may look like a regular parking lot, in a situation of crisis, this is expected to serve as a shelter for Polish civilians. And according to a law introduced last year, many such more developments like this are expected of new property developments going forward as part of a broader program of building up civil defenses in the country. Real estate developers will now have to consider adding a new component to people's dream homes. This comes as Poland aspires to double its current shelter capacity to house at least 50% of its population.
We must start talking about the threats directly, including preparing society for these threats, introducing training and building alternative shelters, hospitals and places for civilians. We don't have any of this.
This urgency is not unfounded. As highlighted by municipal officials, shelters in Poland are few and far between, with the majority dating back to the Soviet era.
In the capital, there are roughly 200 bunkers, 1,300 hidden shelters, and over 16,000 temporary refuge sites. But this is just a preliminary breakdown.
Poland, a NATO chart topper by percentage of GDP spent on defense, anticipates expenditures of around 50 billion euros on defense this year. 3.8 billion have been earmarked for shelters alone.
We're planning to launch efforts to build new facilities and upgrade existing shelters in early 2026.
In order to streamline the navigation to your nearest hiding spot, the Ministry of the Interior launched the Where to Hide app in December, which guides civilians to temporary shelters. But Poland has a long way to go when it comes to its civil defense infrastructure, particularly when compared with its Nordic counterparts, especially a regional trailblazer, Finland.
There's a strong emphasis on emergency measures, so buildings over a certain size, apartment buildings, workplace buildings, have to have bomb shelters, and there's a big emphasis on security of supply. So medicine, food, fuel, electricity.
And as Poland continues to arm up, it's crucial not to forget that conflicts don't take place on the front lines alone, and sometimes even a city center can become a battlefield. For TVP World, Zuzanna Jurek.
Slovakia's Prime Minister Robert Fico set to meet President Donald Trump with a 15 billion euro deal for U.S. nuclear reactors on the table. Long reliant on Russian energy, Slovakia, alongside Hungary, is now looking west. Could energy diversification mark the start of a political pivot towards Trump's America? Our correspondent Andrew Sweeney has more.
The weather in Florida is lovely this time of year, but Robert Fico will be thinking about heat of another sort when he visits the Sunshine State. The Slovak Prime Minister is scheduled to meet with President Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago, where he's expected to discuss a nuclear energy deal.
We are a small country. We can't compete in tanks or fighter jets, but we can compete in energy security and self-sufficiency. That is why I intend to attend the signing of an important agreement between the government of the Slovak Republic and the government of the United States of America on nuclear energy cooperation.
The agreement, reportedly worth up to 15 billion euros, would include the purchase of several nuclear reactors from the United States. A similar deal, worth 14 billion euros, was announced in November last year when Fico's ally, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, met Trump in Washington.
Pipeline is not an ideological or political issue, it's a physical reality, because we don't have port, exactly as the President explained to you. So we will negotiate on that point. It's vital for us anyway.
Both Hungary and Slovakia are dependent on Russian energy imports. 86% of Hungary's oil comes from Russia. Slovakia is almost entirely dependent on Russian oil. The move to secure US nuclear supplies could be a sign that the two most pro-Russian governments in the EU are betting on closer ties with the Trump administration, but one based on economic realpolitik, not ideology.
Mr. Trump personally doesn't care for Slovakia, but he sees an opportunity, one other deal that benefits American interests, benefits American contractors. And if it fits into the political narrative and the political talk of the MAGA movement, well, the better for him. I think the ideology comes very convenient as icing on the cake.
Hungary has also announced that it's looking to diversify its oil supply by buying Russia's stake in Serbia's state oil company, NIS. A spokesman for Prime Minister Orban said that the country's state energy company MOL Group wants to buy NIS and transport oil to Slovakia via Hungary from Serbia.
The Hungarian government supports MOL's planned entry into NIS because the integrated operation of the oil systems of three landlocked, resource-poor countries, Hungary, Serbia and Slovakia, would create an unprecedented level of supply security and price stability across the Central European region.
We love Hungary. After Trump and Fico meet, we may get a better idea of how supply security in Central Europe will change in 2026. For TVP World, Andrew Sweeney.
The end of coal is no longer just a climate goal. It's literally happening underground in the Czech Republic. As the country's last hard coal mine prepares to close, the ripple effects are being felt across the border in Poland, where coal still powers the economy, and the debate over what comes next is far from settled. Piotr Miszczuk has more.
All this drilling in the Czech Republic's last hard coal mine will soon be a thing of the past, and 900 workers will be let go.
The younger ones will have to find some other job. The older ones will retire, probably.
Including some 350 miners from Poland.
I believe it will end somehow. It is sad it's ending because the work is good. I am not going to say otherwise. Hard work, but good work. I could work here for another 5 years. It is what it is.
The reasons for closing production boil down to the high cost of coal extraction at depths reaching 1,000 meters or more, according to OKD, the company that owns the mine. They also note that the demand for coal in the Czech Republic has sunk.
It can be said that the production of electricity in the Czech Republic is no longer dependent on coal. The production of heat still partially is. However, the owners of the heating plants do not hide the fact that they will be converting to gas and biomass in a very short time.
This doesn't mean that the Czech Republic is giving up on coal entirely.
They are still keeping lignite, but not for the very long time. And they're planning to absolutely, completely resign from any form of coal until 2033, but only in case of mining. We have to also remember that they have decided to still have some coal in their energy mix.
But it still might be a model for Poland, which remains the most coal-dependent country across the EU, with the fuel making up some 40% of its energy mix, compared to an EU average of 10%.
I think one of the main lessons that we may take actually is the case of being consistent, both in the terms of the narrative about the closing of the coal mines, but also in the terms of social responsibility to the workers and miners.
Coal is the most polluting source of energy, and Poland has pledged to end its extraction by 2049. But this doesn't change much for the use of coal in the country.
As we declare to say, we go away from and we abandon coal. But this is not true. We are abandoning coal mines, not coal, because coal is still imported to Poland in huge quantities.
Experts say eliminating the more polluting lignite mines would be a good start. While it will take Poland several years to build its first nuclear power plant, one available alternative source stands out, but it comes with some issues as well.
Natural gas, which in case of Poland, it has to be imported because we don't have enough of reserves in Poland to explore and to provide our power generation sector with.
And that would make Poland more dependent upon foreign energy suppliers. For TVP World, I'm Piotr Miszczuk.
A joke meant for laughs has sparked a diplomatic backlash. Thousands of Icelanders are now urging their foreign minister to block Donald Trump's pick for U.S. ambassador. And it all traces back to a single remark. So how did Billy Long manage to offend an entire nation even before setting foot in Reykjavik? Natalia Komarov explains.
Thousands of Icelanders have put their names on a petition to the country's foreign minister, Þorgerður Katrín Gunnarsdóttir, asking her to reject US President Donald Trump's ambassadorial nominee. Billy Long, a former auctioneer, served as a Republican congressman for Missouri until August 2025. How did he manage to spark ire among Icelanders before even assuming office? Well, on Wednesday, a Politico newsletter came out.
We heard that former Representative Billy Long, Trump's nominee for ambassador to Iceland, joked to members on the floor last night that Iceland will be the 52nd state and he'll be governor.
Long later elaborated that the banter was started by his former colleagues from the House of Representatives.
There was nothing serious about that. I was with some people who I hadn't met in 3 years, and they were kidding about Jeff Landry being governor of Greenland, and they started joking about me, and if anyone took offense to it, then I apologize.
But amid Trump's very real threats addressed to friends and foes alike, Icelanders have not found these antics very funny.
The words of Billy Long are offensive to Iceland and Icelanders who have had to fight for their freedom and have always been friends of the United States.
While Billy Long has apologized, should he assume the post in Reykjavik, he may receive a very frosty reception. For TVP World, Natalia Komarov.
The U.S. wants to acquire Greenland, and Donald Trump won't take the use of military force off the table. This has many EU and NATO countries alarmed and wondering what's next for the future of transatlantic relations. Perceptions of the United States are changing, as is the rules-based order that has dominated international relations in modern times. Now joining us to discuss these issues and more is Michael Carpenter, Senior Fellow for Transatlantic Affairs at the International Institute for Strategic Studies. Hello, it's great to see you, and thank you so much for joining us on World News Tonight.
My pleasure.
Yes. Now, starting off here, the latest European Council of Foreign Relations poll shows a dramatic shift in global perceptions. In your view, is America genuinely losing Europe, or is this a temporary crisis in transatlantic relations?
Well, I think it's pretty clear if you look at the polling that the United States is, in fact, losing Europe, to use your term. It's hemorrhaging soft power actually around the world. Trust in the United States is at an all-time low. And if you look at, for example, our neighbor Canada, which has been one of our longest standing and most reliable allies in the world, with which we do an immense amount of commerce every day, Canadians look at the United States now as the chief threat to their country. We've surpassed China in that category just in the course of the last 12 months under the Trump administration. So a lot of our allies now fear the United States. They worry about our territorial claims to their territory. That's the case with Panama. That's the case with Canada. It's the case with Denmark when it comes to Greenland. And many allies worry about whether the United States would defend them under an Article 5 scenario. So yes, the world is changing dramatically, and the United States is aligning itself with authoritarian states, and it's distancing itself from fellow democracies. This is something that we've never done.
Right. What's particularly striking is that in Russia, views of the EU have hardened dramatically, while views of the United States have softened. Putin now sees Europe as the main adversary, not Washington. Is this all Donald Trump's doing?
Well, frankly, it is. I mean, this is the foreign policy of this administration that has completely changed the map of geopolitics around the world. I mean, we've imposed tariffs on both democratic sort of hedging states like Brazil and South Africa and India. We have antagonized allies like Germany because senior U.S. politicians have met with extremist far-right parties in places like Germany, but not just there, in other countries as well. And as I said, you know, we've led our allies to question whether we will be there for them if there were an attack that would fall under NATO's Article 5. And so although like the Secretary General of NATO, Mark Rutte, and others have tried to sort of cling to the United States and to President Trump, in fact, President Trump is rewriting the global order and changing the rules that are familiar to most of our allies and adversaries alike.
Yes, now let's turn to Greenland. Trump refuses to take military options off the table, and Denmark has drawn a red line, and European NATO members are deploying troops. How seriously should we take this threat of actual U.S. military intervention and annexation?
Well, I think it has to be taken seriously. I think in the beginning, when Trump first raised this issue during the first term, and perhaps during the initial months of this administration, there were some who thought that this was simply trolling, that Trump was trying to either play to his base or trying to provoke some sort of a quarrel with liberal internationalists, perhaps with members of previous administrations that valued NATO and alliances, but people didn't take it seriously. I think now they have to take it seriously. Because there have been reports that U.S. officials and the American proxies in Greenland are trying to create support for the incorporation of Greenland into the United States. And so whether you would classify this as sort of an active measures campaign or a shaping the environment type of campaign, or however you see it, it has to be taken seriously.
We're seeing a bipartisan pushback in the U.S. Senate against any Greenland annexation. Does congressional opposition actually constrain Trump, or is this just symbolic?
Well, I think congressional opposition, congressional politics still matter. So the fact that there are some Republicans in Congress, Republicans because they're from Trump's party, I think that makes a difference. I think that constrains the field of action a little bit. And certainly there's been some Democrats as well who have been very vocal in saying that this could undermine the NATO alliance. There's a bill from Senator Murkowski and Senator Shaheen that would make it impossible for the Pentagon to fund activities that would lead to the incorporation of Greenland into the United States. And so there are congressional moves afoot to try to message displeasure, if you like, with the president's policies. But whether that is enough or not, I mean, this is coming from President Trump himself. And, I think those members of his administration that are skeptical are having to fall into line. So, it remains to be seen whether there's enough counter pressure from Congress to prevent him from moving in this direction.
Some argue that Trump's Greenland gambit is really about China and Arctic resources, not territorial expansion. But the effect on European security is the same. How should Europe respond to these threats against a member state?
Well, I don't buy the argument that this is some sort of 3D chess where the United States is really, in fact, concerned about great power competition with Russia and China. I mean, look at the Trump administration's attitude towards Russia. It has been appeasement from day one. There have been no tariffs. There have been minimal sanctions on Russia. President Trump rolled out the red carpet for President Putin in Alaska. I could go on and on. The pressure on Ukraine has been enormous to make territorial concessions. The dislike of NATO and of the European Union is palpable. And so, I think that this is really all about Russian and Chinese ambitions. I think that's a false lead. That's a red herring. Also, the administration is inclined to make sort of a rapprochement with China. I don't think the president wants to decouple with China. I think he wants some sort of accommodation. And so I don't think this is about that. And besides, if it were, Denmark and Greenland have both provided the U.S. military with assurances that we can use whatever assets and bases on the island that we need and want, and we could even build out that footprint further. So I don't think this is about security. I think this is about territorial aggrandizement. It's something that the president wants. It's a feather in his cap that he would like to have for the historical record books for his legacy. And so I think that's what's driving this particular policy.
Okay, well, we'll have to obviously observe the situation a little bit more. Michael Carpenter, it is great to have you to shed some light on this, these very complex issues. Senior Fellow for Transatlantic Affairs at International Institute for Strategic Studies. Thank you so much, and have a great evening.
My pleasure.
And that concludes this edition of World News Tonight. Thank you all for joining us. Have a great evening, and we'll see you next time. Good night.